The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clanged against the concrete floor of my garage. 10:30 at night, and I was elbow deep in the engine of my '87 Camaro, trying to forget another day of Aria's cold shoulders and mysterious late meetings. The phone buzzed on my workbench. "Julian," Aria's voice came through crisp and matter-of-fact, like she was reading a legal brief. "I'm calling to inform you that we have an open relationship now. I've made this decision, and I don't want your opinion about it." I straightened up slowly, wiping my hands on an old rag. Through the phone, I could hear California traffic and what sounded like a man's laughter in the background. My wife of 12 years was 3,000 miles away, probably in some overpriced hotel bar, telling me she was going to start sleeping with other people. "Okay," I said. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. I could practically hear her blinking in surprise. She'd expected yelling, begging, maybe some dramatic declaration of love. Instead, I gave her nothing. "That's it?" she asked. "Just okay?" "What else would you like me to say, Aria? You've made your decision. You don't want my opinion. So okay." Another pause. The man's voice in the background grew louder, more insistent. Probably her new toy calling her back to whatever expensive restaurant they were dining at while I sat in my garage, covered in motor oil and regret. "I'll be back Sunday night," she said finally. "We can discuss the logistics then." "Sure thing. Have fun in California." I hung up and stared at the phone for a long moment. Logistics. She was treating our marriage like a corporate merger that needed restructuring. I suppose that's what happens when you marry a tech lawyer who bills $400 an hour and considers human emotions as obstacles to efficiency. I walked to my mini fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and took a long drink. The garage felt different now, like the air itself had changed composition. Through the small window, I could see Mrs. Polanski's kitchen light still on. The old woman never slept, just sat at her table playing solitaire and watching the neighborhood like a hawk. She'd probably heard every word through these thin walls. My phone buzzed again. A text from Aria. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I typed back, "Wouldn't dream of it." But as I slid the phone into my pocket and looked around my garage, my sanctuary filled with tools and car parts and the honest smell of gasoline, I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Aria wanted an open relationship? Fine. She wanted to play games with our marriage? Perfect. She just had no idea what kind of game I was about to start playing. I'd been Julian Kepler, logistics coordinator for 3 tech companies, faithful husband, and general doormat for long enough. Time to see what other roles I might be good at. The Camaro's engine gleamed under the fluorescent lights, all chrome and power waiting to be unleashed. I picked up the wrench and got back to work. I had a feeling I was going to need this car running perfectly very soon. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Sunday night arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Aria swept through the front door at exactly 9:15, rolling her designer suitcase behind her like she was checking into another hotel. She'd been doing that a lot lately, treating our house like temporary lodging between business trips. "How was California?" I asked from the kitchen, where I was cleaning up the dinner dishes. Tara, our 15-year-old daughter, had eaten with me before disappearing upstairs to her room and whatever teenage drama was unfolding on her phone. "Productive," Aria said, not looking at me. She was already sorting through mail on the counter, her manicured fingers flipping through bills and advertisements with mechanical precision. "The Henderson merger is moving forward faster than expected." "That's great," I said, drying a plate. "Meet anyone interesting?" She glanced up sharply, those green eyes that used to make my heart race now cold as winter glass. "Are we going to have a problem, Julian?" "No problem at all. just making conversation with my wife. Good. She picked up her suitcase. I'm going to shower and catch up on some work. We can talk about our new arrangement tomorrow. Our new arrangement. Like we were business partners, renegotiating a contract. After she disappeared upstairs, I finished the dishes and wandered into her home office. Aria had always been careless with her computer, leaving it open and logged in. Old habits from the days when she trusted me, I suppose. The screensaver was cycling through photos of our family vacations, Tara as a gap-toothed 7-year-old at Disneyland, the three of us on a beach in Mexico, happier times when Aria still smiled at me instead of through me. I jiggled the mouse, and her email popped up. I told myself I was just curious, that I deserved to know what was happening in my own marriage. But the truth was darker than that. I wanted ammunition. The first few emails were standard business correspondence, but then I found a folder labeled Personal. Inside, a thread between Aria and someone named Kyan Marin stretched back 3 months. The subject line read, "Can't wait to see you again." I clicked on the most recent message. "Kian," Aria had written. "Julian took the news better than expected. He's always been weak that way. No fight in him at all. I'll be back in town Thursday. Book the usual room at the Meridian." Kian's response was immediate. "Your husband sounds like a real winner. Lucky for me, he's such a pushover. Can't wait to show you that thing we talked about." I scrolled up through their conversation, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. Photos that made my stomach turn, plans for weekend getaways, detailed critiques of my personality, my appearance, my performance as a husband. They talked about me like I was a minor inconvenience, something to be managed and worked around. But the worst part came in a message from 2 weeks ago. Aria had written, "Maris thinks we should just tell him everything. She says Julian will probably thank us for being honest. God, he really is pathetic, isn't he?" Maris, Aria's best friend since law school, her business partner, the woman who'd been coming to our house for dinner every month for the past 5 years, the woman who'd hugged me at Christmas and told me how lucky Aria was to have such a devoted husband. I kept scrolling and found messages between Aria and Maris, planning my humiliation like they were organizing an office party. Maris had been feeding Aria advice on how to handle me, how to manage the transition, so I wouldn't cause problems for Aria's career. "Julian's too nice for his own good," Maris had written. "He'll roll over and take whatever you give him. Men like him always do." I closed the laptop and sat back in Aria's expensive ergonomic chair. Upstairs, I could hear the shower running and Aria humming something cheerful. She was probably thinking about Kian, or planning their next romantic weekend, or maybe just feeling relieved that her pathetic husband had taken the news so well. She had no idea that the man she'd married, the one who fixed her car and remembered her coffee order and never complained when she worked late, was already gone. In his place sat someone new, someone who'd been born the moment she made that phone call from California. I opened her laptop again and started taking screenshots. Monday morning brought rain and the kind of gray sky that matched my mood perfectly. I dropped Tara off at school, listening to her chatter about some drama involving her friend Madison and a boy named Tyler. Normal teenage problems that seemed refreshingly simple compared to the wreckage of my marriage. "Dad," Tara said as we pulled up to the school entrance, "are you and Mom okay? You guys have been weird lately." I looked at my daughter, Aria's eyes but my stubborn chin, and felt a stab of something that might have been guilt. "We're working through some things, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." That's what parents always say right before they get divorced. Smart kid. Too smart, maybe. "Your mom and I love you very much. That's never going to change, no matter what happens between us." She nodded, but I could see the worry in her expression as she grabbed her backpack and headed toward the building. Another casualty of Aria's selfishness, though I doubted my wife had given much thought to how her open relationship might affect our daughter. After dropping Tara off, I drove to my office at Meridian Logistics. The irony wasn't lost on me that I worked for a company with the same name as the hotel where my wife was conducting her affair. I spent the morning handling routine shipments and inventory reports, but my mind was elsewhere, turning over possibilities like a chess player studying the board. At lunch, I drove across town to Murphy's Gym, a rundown boxing club where I'd spent most of my 20s learning to fight. The owner, Gus Murphy, was pushing 70, but still looked like he could go 10 rounds with men half his age. He was wrapping his hands when I walked in. "Julian Kepler," he said without looking up. "Haven't seen you in what, 2 years?" Something like that. I breathed in the familiar smell of sweat and leather and liniment. Thought I might start training again. Wife finally get tired of you being soft? Gus had always been direct. It was one of the things I'd missed about this place. Something like that. He finished with his hands and looked me over with those sharp blue eyes. "You've gone soft around the middle. Too much sitting behind a desk, not enough moving. But the bones are still good. You remember what I taught you about fighting? Hit hard, hit first, and make sure they stay down." "Close," Gus said. "But you're missing the most important part. You fight smart. You watch, you wait, you learn your opponent's weaknesses, then you exploit them until they can't get back up." I nodded. "When can I start?" "Right now, if you want. But first, you tell me what this is really about." I considered lying, giving him some story about wanting to get back in shape or reliving my youth. But Gus had always been able to see through my nonsense. "My wife is having an affair," I said. "She told me we have an open marriage now. She thinks I'm going to roll over and take it." Gus grunted. "And you're not?" "No, I'm not." "Good." He tossed me a pair of gloves. "Let's see if you remember how to throw a punch." I spent an hour working the heavy bag, feeling muscles I'd forgotten I had come back to life. Gus corrected my form, reminded me to keep my guard up, and pushed me harder than I'd been pushed in years. By the time I left, my knuckles were raw and my shirt was soaked with sweat, but I felt more like myself than I had in months. That evening, I sat in my garage with Aria's laptop, copying files to a secure drive. Email threads, photos, hotel receipts, credit card statements, everything I'd need to document her affair. I wasn't sure yet how I'd use the information, but Gus was right about fighting smart. You gathered intelligence first, then you planned your attack. Aria came home late, as usual, claiming she'd been working on the Henderson merger. She barely looked at me as she grabbed a bottle of wine and disappeared into her office. I could hear her talking on the phone, her voice low and intimate in a way she hadn't used with me in years. I went upstairs and found Tara in her room, earbuds in, staring at her phone screen. "Homework done?" I asked. "Mostly." She pulled out one earbud. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think Mom loves us?" The question hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Of course she does, sweetheart. Why would you ask that?" Tara shrugged. "She's just been different lately, like she's thinking about something else all the time. And she looks at you like, I don't know, like she's angry at you for something." I sat down on the edge of her bed. "Your mom is going through a difficult time right now. Sometimes adults make mistakes when they're confused about what they want." "Are you guys getting divorced?" "I don't know," I said, and it was the first completely honest thing I'd said to anyone in days. "But whatever happens, you're the most important thing in both our lives. That will never change." She nodded, but I could see she didn't quite believe me. Why should she? I wasn't sure I believed it myself anymore. Later that night, I lay in bed listening to Aria type on her laptop, probably messaging Kian or Maris or whoever else was part of her new life. The woman next to me felt like a stranger, someone wearing my wife's face but harboring the thoughts and desires of someone I'd never met. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd start showing her exactly what kind of mistake she'd made. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Tuesday afternoon, Aria announced she was flying back to California for another Emergency meeting with the Henderson team. She'd be gone until Friday, she said, barely looking up from her phone as she packed her suitcase with the efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. Will Kian be there? I asked casually, folding laundry at the foot of our bed. She froze for just a moment, her hand hovering over a silk blouse. Kian Marin is the lead counsel on the Henderson merger. Of course he'll be there. Right, just wondering. She zipped up her suitcase with more force than necessary. Julian, if you have something to say, just say it. Nothing to say. Have a good trip. That evening, after dropping Aria at the airport, I drove to the long-term parking garage where I knew she'd left Kian's car. I'd found the details in one of their email exchanges. Apparently, Kian had flown out earlier and left his Tesla Model S for Aria to use while she was in town. A romantic gesture that was about to backfire spectacularly. The garage was poorly lit and mostly empty. I found the Tesla on the third level, gleaming black paint, reflecting the fluorescent lights. I'd brought a small toolkit and a can of spray paint from my garage. Nothing too dramatic. I wasn't trying to destroy the car, just send a message. I started with the tires, not slashing them, which would be too obvious and potentially dangerous, but loosening the valve stems just enough to ensure a slow leak. By morning, all 4 tires would be flat. Then I popped the hood and disconnected the battery cables. The car would look fine from the outside, but it wouldn't start. Finally, I took out the spray paint and wrote "Homewrecker" across the windshield in neat block letters. The paint was washable, but it would take time and effort to remove. Time that Kian would have to spend explaining to airport security why someone had vandalized his car. I was finishing up when I heard footsteps echoing through the garage. A security guard was making his rounds, flashlight beams sweeping across the concrete. I ducked behind a concrete pillar and waited, heart pounding in a way that reminded me of my boxing days. The guard walked past without seeing me, but it was a close call. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. It was a small victory, barely a pinprick compared to what Aria and Kian had done to me, but it was a start. The next morning, my phone rang at 7:30. Aria's voice was tight with anger. Someone vandalized Kian's car at the airport, she said without preamble. That's terrible, I said, sipping my coffee. Any idea who would do something like that? Don't play dumb with me, Julian. This has your fingerprints all over it. I was home all evening. Ask Tara. A pause. This is exactly the kind of petty, passive-aggressive behavior I'd expect from you. I'm sorry you feel that way. Did they catch whoever did it on security cameras? Another pause, longer this time. The cameras in that section were broken. Lucky break for whoever did it, I guess. How's the Henderson merger going? I could practically hear her grinding her teeth. Fine. We'll discuss this when I get home. Looking forward to it. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee and watching the rain streak down the windows. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. For the first time in months, I'd acted instead of reacted. I'd stopped being the victim and started being something else entirely. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We know it was you. I typed back, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong number." The response came immediately. This isn't over. I deleted the messages and finished my coffee. They were right, of course. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. Friday afternoon brought Aria home in a mood that could have frozen water. She slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the windows and dropped her suitcase in the hallway like she was discarding evidence of a crime. I was in the kitchen, making dinner for Tara and myself, a normal domestic scene that seemed to infuriate her even more. "We need to talk," she said, her voice carrying the kind of cold authority she usually reserved for opposing counsel. "Sure," I said, not looking up from the pasta sauce I was stirring. "How was your trip?" "Cut the act, Julian. I know what you did." I made dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, Tara's favorite. She moved closer, and I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with something else. Guilt, maybe, or just the lingering scent of another man's cologne. Someone destroyed Kian's car. Someone who knew exactly where to find it and exactly how to hurt him without getting caught. I turned to face her, wooden spoon still in my hand. That's awful. Did he call the police? Don't. Her green eyes flashed with something dangerous. Don't stand there and pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. The passive-aggressive wounded husband routine doesn't suit you. I'm not being passive-aggressive. I'm being helpful. If someone vandalized your friend's car, he should definitely report it to the authorities. They might be able to catch whoever did it. Tara chose that moment to come downstairs, backpack slung over her shoulder and phone in her hand. She looked between us, reading the tension in the air with the intuitive skill that teenagers develop when their parents' marriage starts falling apart. Everything okay? She asked. Fine, Aria said, her voice immediately softening. How was school? Boring. Dad, is dinner ready? I'm supposed to meet Madison at 7. 5 minutes, I said. Set the table? As Tara moved around the kitchen, gathering plates and silverware, Aria and I maintained a careful silence. But I could feel her watching me, studying my movements like she was trying to solve a puzzle. She'd always been good at reading people. It made her an effective lawyer, but I'd been married to her for 12 years. I knew how to hide my thoughts when necessary. After dinner, Tara left to meet her friend, and Aria cornered me in the living room. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater, trading her professional armor for something more casual, but her posture remained rigid, with barely controlled anger. I want you to listen to me very carefully, she said. Whatever game you think you're playing, it stops now. Kian is an important colleague, and I won't have you embarrassing me by acting like some jealous teenager. I'm not playing any games, I said. I told you I was okay with your open relationship. I meant it. Then explain the car. What car? She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the tiny lines around her eyes that hadn't been there when we first met. Someone spray-painted homewrecker on his windshield. Someone flattened his tires and disabled his battery. Someone who wanted to send a message. Sounds like someone with a grudge, I said. Does Kian have any enemies? Angry clients, maybe? Disgruntled ex-girlfriends? It was you. Can you prove that? The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. Aria was used to dealing with facts, evidence, things that could be presented to a judge and jury. Suspicion wasn't enough in her world. She needed proof. I don't have to prove anything, she said finally. I know it was you, and you know it was you. The question is what happens next. What do you want to happen next? She sat down on the couch, suddenly looking tired. I want you to accept reality. Our marriage hasn't been working for a long time. We both know it. I'm trying to find a solution that lets us stay together for Tara's sake while still allowing us to be happy. By sleeping with other people. By being honest about what we need. I sat down across from her, studying her face. This was the woman I'd fallen in love with in college, the brilliant law student who could argue any side of any case and make it sound reasonable. She was trying to sell me on the idea that her affair was actually a gift to our marriage. And what if I said I needed something too? I asked. Like what? Like respect. Like honesty. Like a wife who doesn't discuss my personal failings with her boyfriend and her best friend. Her face went pale. You read my emails. You left your laptop open. Those were private conversations. About my marriage, that makes them my business too. She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. Fine. You want honesty? Here's honesty. I haven't been happy in this marriage for years. You're a good man, Julian, but you're boring. You're predictable. You never challenge me or surprise me or make me feel like I'm alive. Kian does. And Maris? What does she do for you? Aria stopped pacing. What about Maris? I read those emails too. The ones where you two plan how to manage me, where she calls me pathetic and you agree with her. Maris is my friend. She's trying to help me through a difficult situation. By helping you humiliate your husband. By helping me figure out how to be happy without destroying our family. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet suburban street. Mrs. Polanski was in her kitchen, probably listening to every word of our argument through the thin walls. Tomorrow, the whole neighborhood would know that the Keplers were having problems. You know what the funny thing is? I said, without turning around. I probably would have agreed to a divorce if you'd just asked. Clean break, shared custody, everybody moves on with their lives. But you didn't want that. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. Keep the stable husband at home while you play with your boyfriend on the side. That's exactly what it is. I turned to face her. You wanted me to be complicit in my own humiliation, to smile and nod while you and Kian and Maris laughed about what a pushover I am. Nobody's laughing at you. Really? Because I have screenshots that suggest otherwise. Her face went white. You can't use those. Attorney-client privilege doesn't apply to personal emails sent from your home computer. I smiled. You taught me that, remember? Back when we used to talk about your cases over dinner. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her lawyer brain working, calculating angles and possibilities. What do you want, Julian? I want you to understand that I'm not the same man who said okay when you called me from California. That man was weak and predictable and boring. This man is something else entirely. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. You wanted an open relationship? Fine, but it's going to be more open than you bargained for. I walked toward the stairs, then stopped and looked back at her. Oh, and Aria? You might want to change your passwords. You never know who might be reading your emails. The weekend passed in a cold war that would have made diplomats proud. Aria and I moved through our house like polite strangers, maintaining a facade of normalcy for Tara's benefit, while carefully avoiding any meaningful contact. I spent Saturday in my garage, working on the Camaro and planning my next move. Aria stayed in her office, probably warning Kian and Maris that their private conversations weren't so private anymore. Sunday evening brought an unexpected visitor. I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner when the doorbell rang. Tara was upstairs doing homework and Aria was taking a bath, so I answered it myself. Maris Ventor stood on my doorstep, looking every inch the successful attorney in her tailored coat and designer shoes. She was shorter than Aria, with dark hair cut in a severe bob and the kind of sharp features that made her look perpetually skeptical. I'd always thought she was attractive in a cold, calculating way, but tonight she looked nervous. "Hello, Julian," she said. "Can we talk?" "Sure, come in." I led her to the living room, noting how she glanced around like she was cataloging evidence. Maris had been to our house dozens of times over the years, but tonight felt different. Tonight, she was here on business. "Aria's not available," I said. "She's upstairs. Actually, I wanted to talk to you." "Really? That's a first." She sat down on the couch, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. I think we got off on the wrong foot. Did we? I wasn't aware we were on any foot at all. "Julian, I know you're angry about the situation with Aria and Kian. I understand that. But I want you to know that I've been trying to help both of you through this transition." I sat down across from her, the same position I'd taken with Aria a few days earlier. Transition. That's an interesting word for it. Marriage is complicated. Sometimes people need space to figure out what they really want. And sometimes people need friends who give them good advice instead of encouraging them to blow up their families. Maris smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I've always given Aria honest counsel. That's what friends do." "Is that what you call it? Because from where I sit, it looks more like you've been pushing her toward this affair from the beginning." "That's not true." "Really? Because I have emails that suggest otherwise." Her smile faltered slightly. "Aria mentioned you'd been reading her private correspondence." Our private correspondence. She's my wife. Julian, I came here tonight because I'm concerned about you. This isn't like you. The man I've known for 5 years wouldn't vandalize someone's car or spy on his wife's emails. You're better than that. I studied her face, looking for tells the way Gus had taught me to watch for openings in an opponent's guard. Maris was good at hiding her thoughts, but she was also nervous about something. She kept glancing toward the stairs as if she was worried Aria might come down and interrupt us. You're right, I said. The old Julian wouldn't have done those things. But the old Julian was married to a woman who respected him. This Julian is married to someone who discusses his personal failings with her boyfriend and her best friend. We were trying to help. You were trying to manage me. Like I was some kind of problem to be solved instead of a person with feelings. Maris leaned forward, her voice dropping to a more intimate tone. Julian, I know this is hard, but maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe there's a way for everyone to get what they want. What do you mean? Aria cares about you. She doesn't want to hurt you. And well, I've always thought you were an interesting man. More interesting than Aria gives you credit for. I blinked, not sure I'd heard her correctly. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm suggesting that open relationships work both ways. Aria has Keon. Maybe you could have someone too. Someone like you? She smiled, and this time it seemed genuine. Why not? We're both adults. We both understand the situation. It could be mutually beneficial. I sat back, genuinely stunned. Maris was offering herself as some kind of consolation prize, a way to keep me quiet and compliant while Aria continued her affair. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive. Let me make sure I understand this, I said. You help my wife plan her affair. You call me pathetic behind my back, and now you want to sleep with me to keep me from causing problems? I never called you pathetic. You said I was too nice for my own good, that I'd roll over and take whatever Aria gave me, that men like me always do. Her face flushed slightly. I was wrong about that. You're stronger than I thought. Strong enough to see through this ridiculous manipulation. It's not manipulation. It's a solution. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street. Mrs. Polanski's light was on again, and I wondered if she was watching Maris's car in our driveway, adding another piece to her neighborhood gossip collection. Here's what I think happened, I said without turning around. Aria told you about the car, about my reading her emails. You realized that your little plan to manage the situation had backfired. So you came here tonight to try a different approach. Seduce the angry husband, make him feel special, keep him from doing anything that might embarrass your friend. That's not... The problem is, you still don't understand who you're dealing with. I turned to face her. I'm not the same man who used to smile and nod when you made jokes about my marriage. I'm not interested in being managed or manipulated or seduced into compliance. Maris stood up, smoothing down her skirt. What are you interested in, Julian? Justice. That sounds ominous. It should. She walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at me. You know, I really did think you were more interesting than Aria realized. I was right about that, wasn't I? You have no idea. After she left, I sat in my living room for a long time, thinking about the conversation. Maris had revealed more than she'd intended. She was worried enough to come to my house and offer herself as a bribe to keep me quiet. That meant my small acts of rebellion were having a bigger impact than I'd realized. I heard Aria coming downstairs and quickly moved to the kitchen, pretending to be busy with the dishes. Who was at the door? She asked. Maris, she wanted to talk. Aria appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing a bathrobe and looking suspicious. About what? She's concerned about my recent behavior. Thought she might be able to help smooth things over between us. And? I told her I wasn't interested in her help. Aria studied my face, looking for clues. What else did she say? She offered to sleep with me. Apparently, that's her idea of a solution to our marital problems. Aria's face went through several expressions in quick succession: surprise, anger, and something that might have been jealousy. She what? You heard me. Your best friend thinks the best way to keep me happy is to throw herself at me. Interesting approach, don't you think? Maris wouldn't do that. Ask her. Aria stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked back upstairs without another word. A few minutes later, I heard her talking on the phone, her voice low and urgent. I finished the dishes and went to my garage, where I sat in the Camaro and listened to the engine idle. Tomorrow was Monday, the start of another week in my new life. I had a feeling it was going to be an interesting one. The Riverside Tech Law Annual Charity Gala was the kind of event Aria lived for. 500 of the city's most successful professionals gathered in a downtown hotel ballroom to network, donate money to worthy causes, and see who was sleeping with whom. Aria had been attending for years, first as a junior associate trying to make connections, then as a partner showing off her success. This year, she'd planned to bring Kian as her date. I learned about this from another email exchange, one where Aria and Kian discussed how to handle the Julian situation at the gala. They'd decided that bringing him publicly would send the right message, that their relationship was serious and socially acceptable. Maris had suggested they frame it as a modern approach to marriage that other couples might want to emulate. They'd forgotten to invite me. The oversight was probably intentional, but it gave me the perfect opening. I bought a ticket online, rented a tuxedo, and made my own plans for the evening. Saturday night arrived with unseasonable warmth and clear skies. I spent the afternoon at Murphy's gym, working the heavy bag until my knuckles were raw and my shirt was soaked with sweat. Gus watched me from across the room, occasionally calling out corrections to my form. "You're fighting angry tonight," he said as I unwrapped my hands. "That's good and bad." "How so?" "Good because anger gives you power. Bad because it makes you sloppy. You want to hurt someone tonight, you better make sure you do it smart." "I'll be smart. See that you are. Angry men make mistakes. Smart men make their enemies make mistakes." I showered, put on my tuxedo, and drove downtown to the Meridian Hotel. The same hotel where Aria and Kian had been conducting their affair, though they'd probably moved to a different location after my little stunt with the car. The irony still amused me. The ballroom was exactly what I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and the kind of people who measured their worth in billable hours and stock options. I recognized several faces from Aria's work events over the years, lawyers and executives who'd made polite conversation with me while silently cataloging my middle-class origins and blue-collar mannerisms. Tonight, they were going to see a different side of me. I found Aria near the bar, stunning in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Kian was beside her, tall and polished in the way that expensive education and inherited money could produce. They were talking to a group of senior partners from various firms, holding court like the golden couple they imagined themselves to be. Maris stood slightly apart from the group, wearing a red dress that complemented her dark hair. She saw me first, her eyes widening in surprise and what might have been alarm. She whispered something to Aria, who turned and spotted me across the room. I raised my champagne glass in a mock toast and started walking toward them. "Julian," Aria said as I approached, her voice carefully neutral. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I bought a ticket," I said. "It's for charity, after all. Wouldn't want to miss the chance to support a good cause." Kian extended his hand with the kind of confident smile that had probably served him well in boardrooms and courtrooms. "You must be Julian. I've heard so much about you." I shook his hand, applying just enough pressure to make him wince slightly. "All good things, I hope." "Of course." The group around us had gone quiet, sensing tension, but not understanding its source. I recognized the senior partner from Aria's firm, a silver-haired man named Davidson who'd always treated me with polite condescension at company parties. "Julian," Davidson said, "how nice to see you. How's the logistics business?" Booming, I said. Amazing how much people need moved from one place to another. Take my wife, for example. She's been doing a lot of traveling lately. California, mostly. Sometimes with colleagues. I looked directly at Kian as I said this, watching his confident smile falter slightly. Business travel is so demanding, Maris said quickly, trying to redirect the conversation. Aria's been working incredibly hard on the Henderson merger. Oh, I'm sure she has, I said. Working late, working weekends, working in hotel rooms, very dedicated. The silence that followed was deafening. Aria's face had gone pale, and I could see her calculating how to minimize the damage. But I wasn't done yet. In fact, I continued, I was just thinking how proud I am of my wife. Here she is, juggling a demanding career, a family, and a boyfriend. That takes real organizational skills. Julian, Aria said quietly. Perhaps we should what? Should pretend that everyone here doesn't know about your open marriage? Should act like it's some kind of secret? Davidson cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps this isn't the appropriate venue for honesty? I turned to him with a smile. I thought lawyers were all about truth and transparency. My wife certainly is. She's been very transparent about her relationship with Mr. Marin here. Very open about her needs and desires. Kian stepped forward, his jaw tight with anger. I think you've said enough. Have I? Because I feel like I'm just getting started. Julian, please. Aria's voice carried a note of desperation that I'd never heard before. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? Because from where I stand, I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. I'm not the one who's been lying to friends and colleagues for months. I'm not the one who's been pretending that adultery is some kind of enlightened lifestyle choice. The crowd around us had grown larger, drawn by the obvious drama unfolding. I could see phones being discreetly raised, recording what was probably going to be the most talked-about moment of the evening. You want to know what's really embarrassing? I continued, my voice carrying across the ballroom. What's embarrassing is a woman who's so cowardly that she can't even ask for a divorce, who has to invent some nonsense about open relationships to justify her affair, who has to get her friends to help her manipulate her husband instead of just being honest about what she wants. That's enough, Kian said, stepping closer to me. You need to leave. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw what Aria found attractive. He was everything I wasn't, tall, polished, born to privilege and success. But he was also soft, I realized. Soft in the way that men who'd never been in a real fight were always soft. Make me, I said quietly. For a moment, I thought he might actually try. His hands clenched into fists, and I could see him weighing his options. But then Davidson stepped between us, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to controlling situations. Gentlemen, please. This is neither the time nor the place. I looked around the ballroom, at the faces staring back at me with a mixture of shock, disgust, and fascination. These were Aria's peers, her colleagues, her professional network. Tomorrow, they'd all be talking about what they'd witnessed tonight. You're right, I said to Davidson. This isn't the place for this conversation. But then again, neither was my marriage, and that didn't stop anyone. I turned to Aria, who was standing frozen beside Kian like a deer caught in headlights. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I said. All of you. I walked out of the ballroom with my head high, leaving behind the wreckage of Aria's carefully constructed public image. Behind me, I could hear the buzz of conversation starting up, hundreds of voices dissecting what they'd just witnessed. It was, I thought, a good start. The fallout from the gala was swift and brutal. By Sunday morning, Aria's phone was ringing constantly. Colleagues, friends, and family members who'd heard about the scene I'd caused. She spent most of the day locked in her office, trying to manage the damage to her reputation, while simultaneously fielding calls from Kian and Maris. I spent the day in my garage, working on the Camaro and listening to the muffled sound of her increasingly desperate conversations through the walls. Tara had gone to spend the weekend with her friend Madison, sparing her from witnessing the final collapse of her parents' marriage. Around 6 o'clock, Aria finally emerged from her office. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and her eyes red from what might have been crying or just fatigue. She found me in the kitchen, where I was making myself a sandwich. "We need to talk," she said. "Sure. How was your day?" "You know how my day was. You destroyed my professional reputation last night." I took a bite of my sandwich and chewed thoughtfully. "Did I? Because from my perspective, I just told the truth about our marriage. I thought you wanted honesty." "I wanted discretion. I wanted maturity. I wanted you to handle this like an adult." "Like an adult? You mean like someone who smiles and nods while his wife publicly humiliates him? Like someone who pretends not to notice when his marriage becomes the subject of office gossip?" She sat down across from me, her hands folded on the table like she was preparing to negotiate a settlement. "Julian, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But what you did last night was cruel and unnecessary." "Cruel? That's interesting coming from someone who's been discussing my personal failings with her boyfriend for months." "That's different." "How?" "Those were private conversations. About my life, about our marriage, about our daughter's future. That makes them my business too." She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were filled with something that might have been regret. "I never meant for things to go this far," she said. "When I first met Kian, it was just attraction, chemistry. I thought I could handle it professionally, but I couldn't. And when things started happening between us, I panicked. I didn't know how to tell you, so I convinced myself that an open marriage was the answer." And Maris? What was her role in this rationalization? Maris was trying to help me figure out how to be happy without destroying our family. By encouraging your affair and helping you manipulate me. By giving me advice when I was confused and scared. I finished my sandwich and carried my plate to the sink. Outside, I could see Mrs. Polanski in her kitchen, probably straining to hear every word of our conversation. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said. "If you'd just been honest from the beginning, I probably would have understood. Not liked it, but understood it. We've been growing apart for years. We both know it. A clean divorce, shared custody of Tara, everybody moves on with their lives." "That's what I want now," she said quietly. "A clean divorce." "Too late for that." She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean you chose to handle this the dishonest way. You chose to lie and manipulate and humiliate me. You chose to turn our marriage into entertainment for your friends and colleagues. Now you get to live with the consequences." "What consequences?" I turned to face her, and she must have seen something in my expression that frightened her, because she actually leaned back in her chair. "You wanted an open relationship," I said. "Well, it's about to get a lot more open than you bargained for. Julian, if you're thinking of doing something stupid, like vandalizing someone's car, like making a scene at a professional event, I think we're well past stupid at this point. What do you want?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want Kian to understand that stealing another man's wife isn't a victimless crime. And I want Maris to understand that manipulating people has risks." "You're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared. You should all be scared." I walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at her. "Oh, and Aria, you might want to check your credit cards, and your bank accounts, and that joint investment portfolio we set up for Tara's college fund." Her face went white. "What did you do?" "I exercised my legal rights as your husband and business partner. Turns out when you're married to someone, you have access to all sorts of interesting financial information. You can't what? Can't protect my assets from someone who's planning to divorce me? Can't ensure that my daughter's future is secure? Can't make sure that the woman who's been planning to leave me doesn't take everything I've worked for? I opened the door to the garage, then paused. You wanted to play games with our marriage, Aria. Now let's see how good you are at playing by my rules. The last thing I saw before closing the door was her reaching for her phone, probably calling her lawyer. It was going to be a very interesting conversation. In my garage, I sat in the Camaro and listened to the engine purr. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for revenge. But tonight, I was content to sit in the dark and plan my next move. The game was far from over.